Our annual business conference, which was to be held at the end of this month, was themed Shift. Who knew that this theme would be so appropriate in light of the COVID-19 virus and how we began leading courageous and now shifting to a new tomorrow? Our keynote presenter this morning, Ian Heller, will address distribution will shift again, but not back to normal. A crisis tends to accelerate changes that were already underway. Forces that were transforming the distribution industry have picked up speed during the COVID-19 crisis, so we'll shift out of our shelter at home lifestyle soon. There's a new normal coming. Ian Heller is the co-founder and chief strategy officer for Distribution Strategy Group, a research, consulting, analytics, and thought leadership firm that provides marketing and strategic planning expertise to the distribution industry. Ian started his career as a truck unloader at a Granger branch and left 15 years later as the VP of marketing. Since then, Ian has served in similar roles at GE Capital and distributors like HD Supply, Corporate Express, and Newark Electronics. Ian holds an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University and is a popular writer, speaker, and consultant in the distribution industry. As a reminder, please note that if you have any questions, you can submit them by typing your question directly into the question box you see in the webinar control window on the right-hand side of your screen. Please welcome Ian Heller.
Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. So thanks for this opportunity to speak to you. I'm so sorry that we're not in person, but I'm glad to be here. Someone can please tell me if my audio is wrong or my screen's not working. So this is called distribution will shift again, but not back to normal. A lot of people are using the term the new normal, but we're never going to go back to anything remotely like it was before. So I prefer to call it the new abnormal. To capture some of the changes that are going on and also to get some feedback around Amazon Business opening up in Canada in October of last year. We did a survey in conjunction with CIPH, and that survey was, we administered over the last couple of weeks. We received 95 responses. Thank you so much for the people who responded. The quantitative data is interesting. The qualitative data, the comments were fascinating, and I'm going to share some of those with you. Most of the responses were from manufacturers and manufacturers reps. There were cases where I combined those, and then we had 26 responses from distributors. So the distributor data, make sure you take that with a grain of salt because it's not from a very large data set. And remember, this is an edited summary of the results. So CIPH will have the entire data set, and then we have some predictions and some recommendations. One of the questions we asked was the distribution arm of Amazon, called Amazon Business, launched in Canada in October of 2019. How concerned are you that this will hurt your business results? And so if you look at all respondents, there was a pretty large portion that was not concerned at all. That's on the left. In the center, there were very few distributors who were not concerned at all, but a pretty significant chunk of manufacturers. And remember, the manufacturers outnumber the distributors, which is why the all respondents number looks more like theirs than the distributor number. So it's just kind of interesting to see the difference in the level of concern between the two groups, right? So you've got, I think there was only one distributor that said they were not concerned at all. The manufacturer, excuse me, I have these reversed. This is the not at all concerned. There was only one distributor who's not at all concerned, and many more manufacturers, because manufacturers, for the most part, view Amazon Business as a potential distributor. Okay, so some of the comments to this question were pretty interesting. I bolded the one that I wanted to read, which is that this is from a manufacturer, and this manufacturer wrote, "Traditional wholesale distribution is slow to change. Consumers are looking for a better distribution system. By the time wholesale adapts, it will be too late." Now, that's a pretty gloom and doom prediction, and there were a lot of others that were much more positive, but there is a certain sentiment out there from some manufacturers and manufacturers reps that Amazon Business is going to win a lot of share in the end game. And so I think it's really important right now for distributors to be having really constructive and good and proactive dialogue with manufacturers and reps about how they view Amazon Business, because there is this sense of inevitability about their ability to take share. And also I think I need to respond. And a lot of what distributors need to do to respond is dependent on support from their manufacturers. So this is an important conversation to have. We had another comment from manufacturers reps, which is that wholesale customers want manufacturers to keep the same distribution channel, and they get angry if a manufacturer considers selling to other channels. But manufacturers need to consider all channels to get their product to market. And I think ultimately manufacturers are going to sell where the customers go, and Amazon Business has a lot of customers. And in the US anyway, we've seen a lot of channel conflict over the years, and eventually the corporation that is bringing the mass of customers to the marketplace eventually gets most of the products anyway that it really wants. But there are certainly some manufacturers who believe that their products are solutions based and they're not suitable really for pick and pack distribution, as you can see in the bottom comment. Another comment was that this is from a distributor. Amazon has hurt our business in a number of ways. They talk about how pricing is visible at all levels, and also how Amazon shows that it's got product in stock, even though it may not always be available easily or in quantity. And the takeaway is at the bottom there, our business is built around having everything a customer needs. If we don't sell the whole package, our entire logistics model will need to change. So, there's a recognition, I think, from distributors that there's a threat here and they need to respond to it. The next question was, will you make any changes in your business due to Amazon Business launching? And as you would expect, distributors were more likely to say yes than no. My observation would be just about everybody's going to wind up making changes to their business when Amazon Business comes into town. Distributors are going to have to make a decision about whether or not to sell on the platform. So will manufacturers. In both cases, there will be channel decisions to make. And one change that's almost certain is if you do not have great e-commerce capabilities today, good digital skills, you're going to have to build them because it's not optional going forward. Among other things, Amazon sets expectations for end users about the digital capabilities that they have and that they get used to. And that's all been accelerated. As someone said, the crisis accelerates change that was happening anyway. And during the COVID crisis, countless people who didn't like to buy online got used to buying online. And millions of people who never had an Amazon or Amazon Business account found that it was beneficial for them to get one. Those people are not all going to switch back to their old ways just because the COVID crisis is over. So I think if you answered no to this question, you're not planning any changes, you really should consider that that's probably not realistic given the impact that Amazon has had that has been accelerated during the coronavirus outbreak. One of the comments to this question from a manufacturer's rep was some concern, right? The nature of a sales agency business is there's no way for this person to know how much product is shipped into his territory and how much product he's then supporting, even though I didn't get those sales. So there is this traceability problem, this measurement problem, and manufacturers reps, they want to know what they're supporting and what they're getting commission for, and Amazon makes that more complicated. Typically manufacturers aren't paying manufacturers reps for sales through Amazon or Amazon Business, and yet there is a request or expectation that they'll support that in many cases. So I think this is another conversation that needs to take place, this time between reps and manufacturers. We had another comment, which is that, and this is something I've been preaching for a while, so I was happy to see it. I think wholesalers need to create a platform for contractors that will be equally user-friendly as Amazon. And I really believe distributors need to create their own marketplace. I'm out there advocating for that. And I think that marketplaces, platform models are going to win in the end. And so you need to have one, or you at the very least have to participate in one. And right now it's somewhat monopolistic with Amazon Business, really being the only fast-growing, enormous marketplace out there in B2B. I think the world would benefit if there was a second one. One frightening comment, I guess, for reps is that this one person, it was only one, so they may look at lowering sales commissions to agents and look at removing staff. A comment from a distributor is we're improving our web presence and functionality, and you're going to see that's one of my prescriptions. I think, look, if you got away with not having fantastic digital capabilities until now, count your blessings, but those days are clearly over. Another question we asked is, are you open to the idea of selling through Amazon Business? And as you can see, there was a lot of disagreement around this. If you look at all respondents, it was nearly split between not sure and yes, with no running in sort of a close third place. But it wasn't that close when you begin looking at distributors and manufacturers. Now, distributors are more likely to see Amazon Business as a competitor versus manufacturers. And so manufacturers obviously were more willing to sell on Amazon Business, although there's a significant number, a quarter who who said they're not going to sell on Amazon Business, and there's a third that aren't sure. But generally speaking, over time, Amazon Business tends to collect more SKUs than anybody, which means that many manufacturers and distributors and retailers, of course, wind up selling on their platform. But this is a pretty significant difference between the two, in my opinion. So the comments here were pretty interesting, and this one sort of reinforced something I mentioned earlier, which is that many feel that the traditional wholesale sales model was already at risk. COVID only served to escalate things, and I think that's true. There were a lot of comments from manufacturers about how, well, we don't really see Amazon as suitable for technical products and maybe for spare parts. So I don't think Amazon Business is going to compete as a fully fledged distributor for a long time. But it's probably going to take away a lot of the A items that in many cases are high turns and high margins. So it can still have an impact even if it's a relatively small proportion of sales. And this is from a distributor. I like this comment. Why help them learn? FedEx. And I think what this person is saying, and that's the entire quote, is look what happened to FedEx. FedEx taught Amazon how to do overnight delivery, and now Amazon's in the delivery business. They're buying 150,000 delivery vehicles for the North American market only. As a point of comparison, UPS has less than 180,000 delivery vehicles of all kinds globally. So you're seeing the rise of a brand new competitor in terms of delivery that's going to help commoditize delivery because prices are going to come down as this new entrant storms onto the marketplace. And so the ability to differentiate with delivery is probably going to continue to diminish, although the bigger and heavier and more technical the delivery, the less there will be competition for it. We also asked some digital questions. So approximately what percentage of your company's total sales come through all digital channels? And then what percentage of your company's total sales come from just your website? And as you can see, distributors, that's the center pair of columns, most of their online sales are coming through their website, no surprise, but it's still a small percentage. So out of this small sample, about 8% of sales were coming from distributor websites, and about 12% were coming from all digital channels, which may include EDI or email to order automation with a product like Connexium, for example. Manufacturers, the vast majority of their digital capabilities were not coming into the web. It was e-procurement and EDI, et cetera. And they only sold a little bit of their stuff on the web, and mostly that's because they're not selling directly. Then you can see how that adds up in terms of the total respondents. But generally speaking, these are concerning numbers. I mean, distributors are in Canada, at least according to this data set, are in a single-digit percentage of their sales to the web. That's probably not where you want to be right now, given that this COVID crisis is driving everyone to purchase online. And you've got a new competitor moving in who's got the world's finest digital capabilities. So this is a tip-off to where I'm going in terms of the recommendations. You need to have great digital capabilities. Okay, we asked people, during the COVID-19 pandemic, do you believe you gained or lost market share from your competitors? Interestingly, very few people thought they lost share, and many people thought they gained share. This is like the famous town where all the kids are above average, right? I mean, this either means that the best players in distribution are all members of CIPH, and that there are a large number of poorer competitors who are not part of CIPH, which of course is possible, or it means that people really don't measure market share very accurately, and they're speculating and they're optimistic. And great competitors tend to be optimistic. My guess is this overrepresents the people who gain share and underrepresents those who lost share. And I would say that if you don't have a mechanism for measuring market share, you should get one, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about how to do that. And that is not a pitch for consulting. That's a phone call that I would have free with anybody. Okay, when the COVID-19 crisis has passed, do you think your company's work from home policy will change in the future? And this is pretty interesting because 2/3 of the total data set, this was about 90 responses, so it's beginning to get statistically significant, said that yes, we will be more willing to consider letting people work from home. Now, this is going to have an impact even if you're in a company that answered no. So even if you were on the 1/3 that said no, My guess is you're probably not going to be able to get away with a more restrictive policy because you're going to be competing for talent with companies who are willing to let people, or are more likely to let people work from home. So this is going to affect the industry. Now we'll see how this breaks out. I don't think anyone believes that we're going to go back to exactly how it was before, but my guess is, and I've talked to several hiring managers because I get a lot of people who call me because they're networking for candidates, and I've talked to several managers who've told me, yeah, we were going to have this position based in, city X, but now we believe that this person could be virtual. So that seems like a fairly significant change and something to keep your eye on. Now, this is a really interesting question that had a very interesting outcome. So we asked, will outside sales reps be more or less important after COVID-19? So the top line is, I think we're going to go back to the way it was before, as if COVID never happened. The second one is, I think outside sales reps will be even more important in the future. And the third one, the blue, is I think there will be less emphasis on outside reps. But look at the breakout difference. Distributors think there will be less emphasis on outside reps. Again, small data set. And manufacturers think that outside sales reps will be even more important in the future. So I would say what this reflects is some uncertainty about what the role of the outside sales rep will be in a world that is increasingly digital. Now, I do think the number of sales reps, outside sales reps, is likely to decline structurally over time at a rather regal pace. I don't think you're going to see millions of account managers out of business. But I do think that if you want to be a successful account manager, the requirements to succeed have gotten much higher. You can't just offer value that customers can get online. If you look at the majority of people in purchasing, like in the rest of the working world, their millennials or younger. And so they do not have the same need or desire to meet in person. They don't rely on people to get answers. They rely on the web. And so successful sales reps need to find other ways of being successful, like bringing value-added services and other business dependencies from the distributor to the customer. Oops. Okay, this is kind of interesting. Since you have worked from home more during the pandemic, have you found it, in the green, easier to be productive with your teammates? In the blue, harder to be productive, or in the red, neither? And this survey, like many others, did not settle the debate. As it turns out, among all respondents, they're split almost evenly, statistical tie between it was easier for me to be productive and harder for me to be productive. And then a pretty significant percentage who aren't sure. So I think this is going to depend on the role. I also think that people were probably less productive at home up front, and then they began to learn how to do it, and they acquired better equipment. So they got microphones and better laptops and better monitors and learn how to use Zoom. And so my guess is that over time, you'll see a little bit of the blue and red move into the green. But again, I think when the offices open up, most people are going to go back to work, but there'll be more tolerance for people working at home, as I mentioned. And then we said, are there any comments you would like to provide on any of this? So this is the last of the survey slides. So the first point, Walmart, Amazon, then Alibaba. What is the life cycle of a business? I think this is a rhetorical question, but it's a good one. There are all kinds of marketplaces coming in B2B. What's going to happen? Disruption is here. People have been predicting it for decades, but now it's real, at least in my opinion. I think the second point, is accurate. If traditional wholesale distributors want to survive, they need to change. And one of the people who wrote a lot about sales reps in the survey, and I really appreciate this person's contributions, ended with knowledgeable, well-connected outside salespeople are the liaison between these stakeholders, and these stakeholders being manufacturers, distributors, and contractors in this case. And I could not agree more. I think that's right. Now, let's talk a little bit about marketplaces. We use the term a lot, but I just want to make sure we're all grounded on what a marketplace is. It's an e-commerce site where there are many, many sellers. There are third parties in this Wikipedia definition, but the transactions are actually processed by the marketplace operator. So for those of you who have used Uber, for the most part, those are private individuals' cars, but all the transactions happen on the Uber platform. eBay has many, many different kinds of, millions of different products coming from many different sellers, but all the transactions happen on eBay. So marketplaces is this many sellers selling through one website phenomenon. But they all tend to operate on a few principles. One is that they're very, very efficient at matching buyers and sellers. And if you remember the days pre-Uber, when you came out of a restaurant at 11 o'clock at night and you tried to find a cab, it could be a very frustrating and sometimes dangerous experience, and you had to walk several blocks to go to a major street to find a place to hail a cab. By comparison, Uber is much more efficient at matching capacity with demand. It leverages underutilized assets. So in the case of Airbnb, it takes empty vacation homes and apartments and turns them into income properties. In the case of distribution, this might be working capital. So it's inventory that's not selling and there's no demand for it, or there's demand that you don't know about, and it also gives a better return on facilities like distribution centers and forklifts and labor. It simplifies the customer search and purchase process. Marketplaces are known for what people call an endless assortment. The old saying that if we don't sell it, you don't need it. It used to see in some hardware stores. That, of course, was never true, but it's probably true that if you can't find it on Amazon, there's a decent chance that it does not exist. People find that very satisfying. They don't have to keep looking. And then it exposes long tail SKUs to potential buyers. So, a lot of times the things that we have on hand aren't visible. It's hard to bring attention to them, but it's easy to bring attention to them in a marketplace environment. And actually, in the US anyway, more product searches now originate on Amazon than on Google, which is something that changed about 3 years ago. Now, in general, there are various kinds of marketplaces. I'm going to focus on two kinds. A third-party marketplace, this is a marketplace that facilitates transactions between buyers and sellers, but the marketplace itself does not compete with its sellers. So for example, eBay brings buyers and sellers together, but eBay itself does not carry any inventory. eBay doesn't own any warehouses. It doesn't have product managers. It doesn't have an eBay private label line of SKUs. And Uber is pretty much the same way. They actually let drivers lease cars from Uber, but Uber doesn't hire drivers as employees. They're all independent contractors driving either a car that they own or that they're paying Uber to rent. Hybrid marketplaces, these have a third-party component, but they also sell their own goods. So Amazon is the leading hybrid marketplace, and there's been a lot of information or expose articles lately about how Amazon is actually analyzing its third-party seller data. That's the accusation. And it is launching its own private label SKUs to compete with its sellers. And that's, one of the significant risks of selling on a marketplace is you reveal a lot of data. So if these reports are true, in my opinion, they likely are, then selling on Amazon is fraught with risks for sellers. And that includes manufacturers, because some of the time they're not just displacing distributors or retailers, they're displacing SKUs for manufacturers. Now, marketplaces these days carry almost everything. One of the core parts of a distributor's value proposition is, we sell it all. We have the hard to find stuff. But really, there's very little that's hard to find anymore. Almost everything can be found online at various marketplaces. They reach almost everyone. They have enormous numbers of customers, eyeballs. They make ordering much easier. You can get everything in one place. They really muddy the B2B versus retail landscape, because Walmart.com is technically a retail marketplace, but there are manufacturers who sell on there who previously sold only through distributors, and I could name several who are suddenly selling on Walmart. Zorro.com, for example, which is a division of the US distributor Grainger, sells what appears to be all their SKUs on Walmart.com. And they're addictive. Once you establish an account, then it's even easier to buy than it was the first time, and so you keep going back and you become familiar with it. And this is one of the reasons you really need to have a great digital capability, because people get used to buying from you. The hardest thing to get on a website is that first dollar from a customer, because there is an account setup process they have to go through. And in many cases, they have to hand over purchasing information, like might be a credit card or some other purchasing information. Once they provide that, then the purchasing process gets much easier and they get familiar with it. And this is one of the things that helps Amazon Business, is that business buyers see it as a very familiar interface, because most of them have Amazon accounts. And so buying from Amazon Business, the B2B division, is pretty familiar to them. So in my opinion, the rise of marketplaces is inevitable. And it comes with risks, as we said. For distributors, there's a risk of market share erosion, hit on sales and profits, SKU cannibalization, so they study your data and steal your best sellers. and significantly loss of control over customer relationships. Amazon is unapologetic about the fact that you cannot communicate with customers who buy through their platform except around transaction-related issues and through Amazon's closed email system, and they monitor it. Manufacturers really face customer concentration, so if there's consolidation in the industry, I think manufacturers who just view Amazon Business as another distributor are overlooking the risk that if Amazon Business becomes overwhelmingly huge, their margins are going to go down. This has happened over and over again when Home Depot became the dominant player in home improvement. Margins went down for many manufacturers who sold through them, and that's likely to happen if Amazon Business becomes enormous. They face lower profitability as a result, potential product substitution. But here's what's appealing to customers: this massive assortment. They estimate that there are 350 million active SKUs on Amazon Business, 52 million on Walmart. There's a little material handling website called TruePar that has 8 million SKUs. eBay Business and Industrial has 7 million. Grainger, which was always the assortment leader, by comparison has about 4 million. So as you can see, it's pretty much game over when it comes to assortment. Marketplaces are always going to have more because they have so many third-party sellers. Interestingly, Amazon has about 3 million third-party sellers who are active. That's 3/4 the number of Grainger's total SKUs. Amazon Business. Now, the World Bank of Canada estimates that Amazon Business is going to generate $52 billion in sales by 2023. Bank of America Merrill Lynch believes that number will be $34 billion. But they believe that by 2029, Amazon Business will achieve $125 billion to $245 billion in gross merchandise revenue. And distributors don't create demand; they don't invent products like manufacturers do. So all of that business comes out of somebody else's pocket. Morgan Stanley believes that the third-party sales are delivering a 20% EBITDA to Amazon. Now, Amazon has various ways of making money. Obviously, they charge a fee. It's normally about 12%. But they also charge you for labels if you are shipping through FBA, and they've got various service charges. I talked to one manufacturer recently who told me that they pay $200,000 a year to Amazon for a dedicated product manager. And that's, I'm sure, a profit center for Amazon, because I bet you they're not paying that product manager $200,000. And I wonder if it's really exclusive for that matter. But right now, more than half of Amazon Business's sales come from third-party sellers. So they're really relying on this as a growth mechanism. Okay, so Amazon Business launched in the US back in 2015, and it's been growing around the world. You can see it. They're opening up in multiple European countries, and it's been kind of interesting because traditionally retail and distribution weren't really global models, but Amazon seems to have found a way to make itself global. And in 2019, they opened in Japan and India, and in Canada on October 19th, they made the announcement. So this is going to change the game in these countries, and that's why they went from 0 to 10 billion in about 3 years. And they're probably, my estimate is at least 16 billion this year, although I think that's conservative. And guess what? They're not the only game in town. There are several other organizations that are standing up marketplaces that are either purely B2B or sell a lot of B2B merchandise. Alibaba, which is one of the largest e-commerce companies in the world, and a Chinese company owned by Jack Ma, is starting a B2B marketplace. eBay Business Supply is back in business. They kind of got out of B2B for a while, but they're back. Google has launched its own marketplace called Google Shopping. You can transact on Google Shopping, or you can go to the merchants and transact there. And they sell a lot of B2B merchandise. Zorro, again, sells everything on Google Shopping, at least it appears to, and a lot of other distributors do as well. Walmart.com has retail and B2B SKUs, and Zorro, the Grainger division, is now starting its own marketplace to compete with these other B2B marketplaces. And I'm happy to share this chart or this presentation with anybody, but I think the risks to the sellers vary based on whether or not the company is a direct seller. You may have seen that Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, has agreed to testify on Capitol Hill in the United States because the general counsel in Amazon claimed that they were not using third-party seller data to create competitive SKUs. And the Wall Street Journal had an investigative story that claimed that that was not true. And so Jeff Bezos is going to go to the Hill himself to testify on that topic. So it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say. So this is disruption, right? So the core value proposition of distributors is, at least the old-fashioned one, is being commoditized, right? So we have a lot of stuff in stock. We make it readily available and we get it to you quickly. That's not differentiating anymore. Marketplaces are growing rapidly, and there are multiple well-capitalized new entrants. By the way, Berkshire Hathaway has a sourcing marketplace and has bought several distributors, so you combine them with Amazon and Google and Alibaba and Walmart. Typically, when those companies move into your industry, it's not a great thing for the incumbents. Incumbents have to do something about it. And so I asked the question, what if it's really about marketplaces? It's not about e-commerce per se. What if what we're really seeing is the end of the utility of a single company, a company-specific website? And I mean, you're not going to have your own website. I mean, that's not where buyers are going to go to buy merchandise. They're going to go to one of these marketplaces, or what will undoubtedly be new marketplaces in the future, and pulling assortment across a large number of competitors is just, former competitors, I guess, is just how people are going to create assortment in the future, because no individual company can compete with the breadth of these marketplaces. Consumers obviously love them. This doesn't mean you won't sell things on your website. You will. And frankly, the more it requires configuration or quotes or technical support, the more likely it is people are going to come to a company-specific website. But for the stuff that's more commoditized and people don't really need help to buy it, I think those sales are going to migrate to various kinds of marketplaces. So if that's true, then we have to talk about, well, what's the strategy? Well, for manufacturers, you should invest in distributors that are technology fast followers, because look, distributors are going to have marketplace strategies. Maybe you choose not to sell on Amazon Business because they compete on a first-party basis, but you sell on eBay Business Supply, and you sell on Google Shopping, and you sell on Alibaba, none of which are first-party sellers. But you're going to have great technology to do that. No matter what, you have to have great technology. If you want to go it on your own, if you don't believe my marketplaces are going to thrive message, you're going to go on your own, you better have fantastic technology, because it's just what customers expect these days. If you're going to go and sell on a marketplace, in many cases, the demands are even higher. You have to have great product data. You must be fully integrated into your ERP. You must be able to perform, or you're going to get booted out of the marketplace. So being a great technology company is not optional for distributors. So if you are a manufacturer picking distributors to bet on, pick those who are technology fast followers. You do not have to offer the same level of technology that Amazon does. But one of the good things about battling Amazon is they have a lot of enemies, which means that all the stuff that they do that's so sophisticated and proprietary today will soon be available from other third parties, from their competitors, who will sell you, AI-enabled technology and item recognition and voice ordering and all that other stuff. So you probably can't wait 10 years to build that stuff in, but you can wait 5. So get on it. And then you want to find distributors who are surrounding end customers with services. More on that in a minute. You want to find distributors who say, look, we're building a marketplace strategy because it's just the way of the world now, and we can't not have a marketplace strategy. Okay, oops. Strategies for distributors. First, you need to upgrade your IT systems, particularly e-commerce and artificial intelligence. You better have a great ERP. The days of the homegrown solutions are over because you need too many plugins, too many APIs. So you need a great ERP, and there are several from which you can choose. And you need great e-commerce capabilities. That means, state-of-the-art website, but also great product data and easy checkout, a great experience in the shopping cart, etc. You need to start understanding artificial intelligence. You do not need to put it in place now. I do a lot of speaking on artificial intelligence and writing, but it's technology that gets better at its task on its own without human intervention, and that's really where the future of technology is going. You need a very robust strategy to build your services, and you need a marketplace strategy, as I mentioned earlier. Now, service development is essential because marketplaces hate involving people in the delivery of value. Amazon likes to have no labor involved at all in its transaction. So as a distributor, if you do things that require labor, and that might be repairs and assembly and kitting and labeling and inspections of all kinds, etc., then you're building a pretty good moat around your business, because that's the type of expense that marketplaces hate, because it does not leverage as sales grow. And so they want to keep people out of the transaction. So if you're going to compete with them, that's a lot of white space you can move into. You need to put people into the value delivery. And I think personally, in terms of services, it should be a general manager-led profit center. You need someone in charge of services. And I met actually an HVAC distributor. I was sitting next to a new hire for an HVAC distributor in America. And this person was their director of services, came from a manufacturing environment, knew about the stage gate process and all the other things that manufacturers use to develop services. And his job is to develop the service portfolio for this American distributor. And you need to stop bundling so much. I mean, I think it's been the nature of the industry, but when you're giving your services away, there's probably not very rigorous attention to the costs around them and how good you are at delivering them. If you're charging for them, then you have to meet certain standards and make sure they're good services. And then one thing I tell distributors in particular is you need to have a services tab on your homepage. I mean, do you have a website that does not have a services tab? I mean, even if you don't do this other stuff, for heaven's sake, take credit for the services that you do offer and offer a great, compelling explanation for those services. And I go to many websites that distributors operate, and I have to search really hard to find the services because there's not one place to find them. Well, this is one of your most differentiating capabilities versus marketplaces. For heaven's sake, take credit for it. Create a services tab, spend some time writing very compelling copy around your existing services, and then have a plan on how you're going to develop more over time. In terms of your marketplace action plan, and I realize we've got 6 minutes left, I'm going to get there, we're almost done. You should track your exposure to marketplaces. I don't think you should overcomplicate this. Here's what I would do. If you work for a distribution company, I would take 300 random transactions over the last few months, every nth transaction. Get a group of people in your business together in a conference room, stack up those transactions, and then create two piles. One pile is, yeah, someone probably could have bought this on Amazon or Amazon Business or another marketplace because we didn't add value to it in any particular way. And that goes in one pile. The other pile is stuff that people probably would not have ordered on a marketplace. Maybe it's anything from a reserved inventory for a specific customer to it's highly technical and you needed to add some value with knowledgeable employees, to there was some kind of fabrication, kitting, vending, bin replenishment, you name it. Let's just create two piles. The pile on the left, which is the stuff that could have been sold through marketplaces, that as a percentage of your total transactions and as a percentage of total revenues out of the 300 is your numerical exposure to marketplaces. So you can calculate it on a percentage basis or on a transaction basis or on a line item basis, add it up. And I think over time, if you have that discussion every month, you and your team will start coming up with ideas about how to make the right pile bigger. The right pile is the one where customers would probably not have bought that on marketplaces. But talking about marketplaces all the time in your business and how you're going to build walls between what you do and what your customers do, it's all going to start with looking at real transactions that customers have placed. I don't think there's any substitute for that, particularly in a boardroom in a business where people often try to have good ideas without sufficient customer input. So bring those transactions together. That's really the voice of the customer that they voted with their dollars on. Meet with marketplace leaders by all means. If you haven't gotten a call from Amazon Business, you probably will. They want you to sell your stuff on their platform. Be careful about the risks, but by all means, listen to the sales pitch of all the marketplaces that I just presented. And then learn from experts. Make sure you are participating in calls and webinars like this and others, and remember that you really can't do strategy in 2020 without taking into account marketplaces. It's just it would be like being in 1995 and not taking e-commerce into account. You're not looking forward in the world to watch what's happening. Okay, so there's been a lot of stuff boosted by COVID. One is that just about everyone has learned to buy online, but it's boosted marketplaces the most. Amazon hired, I believe, 175,000 people, and they're offering most of those people full-time jobs because they've grown so much. Virtual work became common. Everybody's got the tools, the capabilities, the culture. People are more forgiving of a more casual presentation or kids running in the background or dogs howling because they just realize it's part of working from home, and that's made them less sensitive to those kinds of things. And digital capabilities are no longer optional. There's no way of going back from the future. So that's what I have. Let me see if we have any questions that came about. I don't see any, but I'm happy to answer any. If there aren't, though, I would encourage you to contact me. That's my email address. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. I don't charge for phone calls, and I don't charge for friends, and I consider everyone on this call a friend. So thank you so much for the time. It was an honor to be a part of your meeting, and I look forward to hearing from some of you in the future. Thank you.
Ian, we do have actually one question.
Great.
How can our industry best utilize 5G technology and benefit from its power?
Yeah, well, okay, so I have a whole presentation that covers that, but what I would say quickly is that 5G is going to be particularly helpful when it comes to enabling automation in autonomous vehicles. So I would say if you didn't believe that things like autonomous drones and autonomous delivery vehicles were real, the rate of communication speed between those devices now is going to escalate to the point where autonomous delivery is going to become a reality and people are going to expect it, and it's going to lower your operating costs. So one of the things you can do is begin exploring the use of autonomous vehicles in warehouses and for delivery purposes, because it can save you money and provide better accuracy and better customer service.
Perfect. And we just had another question come in. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to type them into the question box. Ian, what is the best advice you can provide to manufacturers and distributors in terms of relationships?
So two things. One is regular dialogue on a scheduled basis that's disciplined and you don't miss it. And the second one is go make sales calls. Probably the best general manager I ever worked for spent 3 days a week. This was a multi-billion-dollar distributor. He spent 3 days a week making sales calls, and I think there is no substitute for that. I love market research. It's great. But having dialogue on a regular basis, getting the hard issues surfaced, and then talking to customers face to face so the feedback you get from them is not filtered in any way. Those are the two pieces of advice that come to me off the top of my head.
Perfect. I'll wait a couple more minutes to see if any more questions come in. While we're waiting, I'm just going to say that a copy of Ian's presentation will be sent to everybody after the session is over today. So you will be able to view the recording afterwards. If you have any other questions, because we don't seem to have any other questions coming in, please feel free to send any questions after the session to Ian. His contact information is on the screen, or you can send them to info@ciph.com. Oh, Ian, we have another question come in. Ian, how do you see Amazon and Google entering the HVAC and plumbing service delivery business and therefore controlling the distribution channel?
Well, Amazon's already in the delivery business, of course. I think they're primarily retail delivery, consumer delivery, but increasingly they're going to be in B2B delivery. I think just like what they're going to sell the commodity stuff, the stuff that doesn't require a lot of input or expertise, and they're going to deliver that stuff very efficiently. They're going to deliver by drone. It's already started. I think Google is going to rely on third parties like UPS and FedEx. So their deliveries, they're not going to deliver, water heaters and condensers and stuff like that. But I think for ordinary stuff, both of them are going to be very, very quick at delivery, to the point where distributors hotshot deliveries, as some people call it, where they send somebody out in a van or a pickup truck to do a quick delivery. That's not going to be fast enough anymore, and you're going to have to learn to deliver as well as they do, which is going to include, frankly, things like drones.
Perfect, and I think that is it for questions. So like I said, if you have any other questions, please feel free to email us at info@ciph.com, or you can contact Ian directly. Thank you so much, Ian, for your presentation, and thank you so much to everybody for attending our AGM and Ian's webinar. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and if you need anything, please don't hesitate to contact anybody at CIPH. Thank you so much.